Your grocery bill jumped about a third in 5 years. You already know that part. You feel it at the register. It is that gap between what you loaded in and what the screen demands. But the receipt is not the thing I want to talk about today. Something else shifted inside that store. Something quieter, and it has almost nothing to do with the price of eggs. Here is what I mean. Walk into the place you have shopped at for a decade. The aisles sit where they always sat, and the brands are the same. But the whole room feels colder now. A little hollow, like someone rearranged it while you slept. Fewer people on the floor. More lenses on the ceiling. Machines standing where a person used to stand. Nobody announced any of it. There was no sign taped to the door. It arrived one small change at a time. Until the store you know stopped feeling like a place, it became a facility. I pulled this apart for a while, and I want to walk you through 3 things. What changed, why it changed, and the part almost nobody says out loud. What the store now quietly takes from you on every visit, not just your money. Stay with me. By the end, this reframes your whole weekly trip. Start with the thing you already feel in your wallet. Food is up. Hard. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reports a jump. Grocery prices climbed more than 30% since just before the pandemic. More than 30%. That is not a rounding error on a budget. It is a permanent step up in the cost of feeding a family. And the average hides the worst of it. Beef roast jumped nearly 74% over that same stretch. Ground beef, more than 52%. The center of an ordinary dinner got hit the hardest. Here's what interests me though. Most people stopped being shocked by the total a while ago. They adjusted. They swapped brands and shrank the cart down. They stopped checking prices they used to grab without a second thought. The sticker surprises no one anymore. What quietly gnaws at people is something different. It is the sense that even at these prices you carry out less than you used to. And that feeling is not in your head. Pick up your usual cereal. Same box. Same art. Same shelf. The price crept up a touch. But the box weighs less than it did 2 winters ago. A container that once held 18 ounces now holds 15. The chip bag has more air on top and fewer chips at the bottom. Famous ice cream brands slimmed their tubs down. They did it so smoothly you would never catch it in the freezer aisle. There is a name for this now. Shrinkflation. It left the economics textbook and became a kitchen table complaint. Because people live it every single week, and no company ever admits it to their face. The price rises and the product shrinks. At the same time, on purpose. Now watch the produce, because it plays the same trick in a new costume. A shopper flagged this, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Apples and oranges that used to ring up by the pound now ring up by the piece. 1 apple, 1 price. It sounds like nothing, but price fruit per item instead of per pound. Now the small ones cost what the big ones cost. The quiet math almost always tilts toward the store, not toward you. It is a price hike wearing the mask of simplicity, and even that is only the surface. The deals thinned out too. Those buy one get one offers families used to plan the whole week around are harder to find now. The coupons that once moved to total in a real way barely dent it. And on the shelves, something subtler shifted. There is simply less to choose from. Not because it sold out, but because the chains trimmed what they carry on purpose. The trade calls it SKU rationalization. Cut the variety. Push the top sellers. Make the back end of the operation simpler to run. Walk any aisle, and the shelves still read as full. But the real span of options quietly shrink. Here is a detail I only found buried in the comments. From people who actually worked the floor. One woman ran her family store. She could order twice a week. But the distributors decided what showed up. Sale items get promised, then withheld. And the customer blames the clerk standing right there who had no say in any of it. So this is not just the store optimizing. It is the whole chain above the store clamping down. And the person you see is the one who takes the heat. Stack it all up. Pushier goods. Lighter boxes. Fewer bargains. Less on the shelf to pick from. Alone, each is a minor gripe. Together, they build one very particular feeling. You're working harder for a cart that hands back less. That part is real. But it is still just a visible layer, because the deepest changes have nothing to do with the price tag. They live in what the store quietly became, and in what it does while you shop. Let me give you a number that reframes the whole checkout line. Roughly 6 in 10 grocery transactions now run through a self-checkout, not a cashier. That is not one weird region or one odd chain. That is the new default at the front of the American store. Feel like you talk to a screen more than a person these days? You are reading the room right. But the kiosk itself is beside the point. What matters is what got cleared away to fit it in. Think back 20 years, not to the products, but to the feeling of being in one. You might bump into someone you knew by the tomatoes. The cashier might remember your usual and mention it. A stalker might catch you squinting and point you to the thing before you even asked. None of it was a big event. Each one lasted a few seconds. But they stacked into something real, something that stitched the store into the neighborhood. A place. Not a warehouse with a door. Locked into that same store today. The floor plan barely moved. The same checkout lanes. The same footprint. Yet most of them sit dark. Maybe one register open, maybe 2 out of 10. The rest are kiosks now. Not because the building ran out of room. Because the arithmetic flipped. Wages rose. Hardware got cheap. And the calculation they ran for years spit out a new answer. So the human part of the front end got reorganized away, quietly. The store runs leaner now. It also feels a lot less like somewhere you belong. And now I want to name something the usual version of this story skips right past. When you use that kiosk, you are not just checking out. You are doing a job. You are the cashier now. You are the bagger too. And you're doing it for free. A shopper said it's sharper than any analyst could. He refuses to scan his own groceries, and he will not work unpaid on the store's behalf. He would rather stand in a long line and help a real person keep a paycheck. Another put it flat. Pay me, knock 5 or 10% off the total, and I will ring myself up gladly. Until then, this is labor. It is unpaid. And it got handed to you so smoothly that almost nobody noticed a whole job change hands. Sit with the irony of it. Here is a scene that runs thousands of times a day. Someone steps up to self-checkout to save 2 minutes. The first few items scan fine. Then the machine chokes. A red light. A beep. A message begging for an employee. And they wait. 30 seconds. A minute. Sometimes longer. The thing built to be faster just made them slower. And the only difference from the old days is this. Nobody stands there to share the moment. Now, the chains did not do this out of spite for customers. Labor is one of the heaviest costs a grocery store carries. And delivery apps squeeze margins that were already razor thin. Those pressures are real. But here's the honest question. The industry ducks. A viewer asked it sharper than I could. If labor costs are climbing and that drove the machines in, one question follows. Why are the workers not paid more? The staff did not get richer. So where exactly did the savings go? I will not hand you a villain. The truthful answer has several moving parts. Cheaper technology, thin margins, real competition. But let the question hang there. Because your grocery bill is funding a saving, and that saving is landing in somebody's pocket, it is worth asking whose. And the missing person at the front is not only an economic story. It is a human one, and it lands somewhere you might not expect. Survey work by the American Psychiatric Association found something striking. Roughly 1 in 3 American adults feels lonely at least once a week. That sounds like a headline for a different video, but it connects right here. Picture someone who lives alone. Their whole day loops between the job and the couch. That grocery run was often their only spoken exchange with a stranger all day. Nothing deep. A quick word while paying. A nod by the deli case. A small reminder that they share the world with anyone at all. Pull those moments out one kiosk at a time and something leaves with them. Something hard to measure. Very easy to feel. The lights still burn and everything is in stock. But the quiet sense that a place noticed you walked in is getting hard to find. That is not nostalgia. That is a thing that was here and now is gone. We built stores that no longer need us to be there. And slowly, quietly, they trained us to expect nothing in return. Have you felt this in your own store? Tell me below. I read them all. I really want to know how it feels in your town. But how shopping feels is still only one layer. Because something else is happening in these stores, something that would have looked bizarre a few years back. Head over to the health and beauty section. Spot the thing you came for. Reach out a hand, and nothing budges off the shelf. Not because it's sold out, but because it sits locked behind a sheet of plastic. Toothpaste, razors, shampoo, baby formula, cold medicine. Things that sat on open shelves for generations now wait behind a case, behind a button, behind a key, all to buy an item that costs $4. The reason is not complicated, but it is worth sitting with. American retail loses more than $100 billion a year to theft, to fraud, to inventory that simply goes missing. Grocery runs on some of the thinnest margins in all of retail. For a business like that, locking up what walks out can decide whether a store survives. On a spreadsheet, it adds up cleanly. In the aisle, it becomes something else. Most people standing at that locked case do not consciously feel accused, but the friction lands anyway. A small real irritation stapled onto one of the most ordinary chores of the week, and the case to something the chains did not fully expect. Research keeps finding the same result. When the product is locked away, a real share of people simply leave it. They do not press the button. They do not hunt down a worker with a key. They put nothing in the cart and walk out. To another store. To an app. Or they simply do without. That case existed to guard a sale. And often enough, it kills the very sale it meant to save. The security measure manufactures the exact loss it was designed to prevent. Now here is where I hand you something the standard story never does. Because one viewer saw straight through that locked case. And what he said changes how you read the store. He pointed out that the lock forces a question. Do I actually need this right now? That friction, that half second of hesitation, is precisely what stops an impulse buy. It is the same reason a company wants your card saved on file. One tap, no thought. Because the less you have to think, the more you spend on pure habit. So he flipped it around. He started using friction on himself, on purpose, to break the habits he wanted gone, to build the ones he wanted. And this is the part that matters for you. Friction is not good or bad. It is a lever. The store aims that lever at your wallet all day long. Bright displays at eye level. Low thought checkout. Offers that pop the second your guard drops. Every one of those is engineered ease. Ease that quietly helps you spend. Which means you can pick the lever up and aim it the other way. Leave the card at home. Pay with cash you counted out. Watch how much slower your hand moves. Write a list. Treat anything off it as a thing that must earn its way in. Put friction between you and the impulse. And the store's whole toolkit stops working on you. The system was built to remove your hesitation. Your move is to put it right back. That paradox of the locked case pushed the chains toward a smoother answer. Protection that quietly costs money. Something that does the lock's job without the weight, without the key, without the shopper walking out. Something you cannot see. More than 80% of major retailers now use or test artificial intelligence. For store operations. For loss prevention. For tracking inventory. More than 80%. This is not some prediction of a coming wave. It is already here. Live inside stores that look identical to how they always did. And the fact that you cannot see it is the whole point. Higher prices, you notice. Smaller boxes, you feel in your hand. The kiosk, you stand at. The locked case stops you cold. But this system wears no face in the aisle. It stays silent. It never announces itself. Physically, it is just a small camera bracket bolted overhead. A slim sensor pinned to the lip of a shelf. A colored flash on a screen that dies in under a second. Nothing draws your eye. Nothing tells you what is running underneath. So let me tell you what is running underneath. Lift a product, change your mind, and set it back down. That move can be recorded, not to single you out. But over thousands of tiny moments like it, a shape emerges. Which products pull attention but no sale? Which shelves people drift past? Which items make a person stall? Linger in front of a display longer than most? And that pause can become a data point. Scan an item at self-checkout. That quick colored flash is not random. That is usually a loss prevention model doing a real-time scan. It matches what the camera sees against what you claim you scanned. Weighs it. Runs the pattern. All in the blink before you reach for the next thing. You never watch it work. 9 times out of 10, nothing comes of it. But it runs continuously across nearly every transaction in nearly every large store you enter. So why pour money into this? It comes down to the math of scale. A chain runs hundreds of millions of transactions a week. It does not need a big win to profit. Shave a fraction of a single % off its losses across that volume. Suddenly, you are talking about an enormous sum. Year after year. That is what turns this into one of retail's largest wagers ever. Not because it looks impressive, because at that scale, a tiny sliver is worth a mountain of money. And it is not just about catching theft anymore. The same systems watch the shelves for gaps before you notice them. They guess what people will want before they arrive. They point staff toward wherever they are actually needed. To the retailer, it is an engine for running lean. To you, it raises a question you cannot unask once you have asked it. Does a bottle of shampoo really need this much machinery humming around it? Most shoppers are not asking that yet because the whole thing was designed to go unnoticed. People still talk about AI like it is coming. Some future force that reshapes daily life one day. The easy thing to overlook is that it landed a while ago. It watched your last grocery run and almost certainly the one before. It did not knock. It slipped into hardware that was already up on the walls. By the time people thought to ask, it had quietly run for years. But the strangest place this technology turned up is not the ceiling. It is the thing you grab the moment you walk in, the shopping cart. For nearly 100 years, the cart did a single thing. A metal basket on wheels. You rolled it around, loaded it, unloaded it, and some kid wheeled it back. Nobody gave it a second thought. That is changing now, and most people have no clue. A growing number of chains are rolling out a new kind of cart. Screens on the handle. Barcode readers in the frame. Sensors weighing the basket. They can total your whole trip as you go. You pay from the cart before you reach a register. The convenience is real. Scan as you drop things in. Watch the number climb. Tap to pay and leave. No queue. No checkout stand. But checkout speed is only one of the jobs that cart was built to do. Everything you drop in, it records. Everything you take back out, recorded. The item you carried 2 aisles and returned to the shelf, that flicker of second guessing, logged. How long you spent in each zone. Which display slowed you down. Whether the screen's coupon nudged your next move. Every bit of it becomes data. And here's the piece that rearranges the whole picture. The item you put back generated no sale, but it generated a signal. Proof of what caught your eye, what you weighed, and what made you say no. Scale that up over hundreds of thousands of shoppers and many months of visits. That signal becomes genuine knowledge. Knowledge about how real humans decide to spend. This is why information turned into one of the most prized assets a chain holds. In bulk, it is sometimes worth more than the food sitting inside the cart. If any of this is hitting different than you expected, a quick like helps. It reaches people who have not heard it yet. That is the only reason I mention it. Let me make the value of that data concrete. Picture 2 shoppers. Same store, same Tuesday afternoon. Both grab milk, bread, and a few basics. Both spend around $50. On the surface, the 2 runs match. To the software running quietly underneath, they are utterly separate events. One tapped the rewards app. The other handed over cash. One tripped an AI alert when the bagging weight missed the scan, and waited while it sorted itself out. The other sailed straight through. One slowed about 11 seconds at a new display before moving on. The other never broke stride. Every one of those gaps became data. Not really about those two people, about patterns. Which kind of shopper bites on which promotion? Where eyes truly land against where the store guessed they would. What those final seconds hold just before a no. 30 years ago, a store knew what sold and what did not. It knew when to restock. It had a rough feel for busy versus slow. The sale happened, a record got made, and that was the whole exchange of information. Today the sale still happens, but laced around every second of that sale, something else gets produced. A continuous, detailed portrait of how people behave inside a store, at a resolution that never existed before. And that portrait is worth real money, far beyond any single receipt. Suppose a chain can forecast what much of its base will buy next week. Then it stocks just enough, on the right shelf, priced it to move, with the right promo wrapped around it. All before you ever thought about dinner. That same behavior data does one more thing that is easy to overlook. It works as an early warning on the whole economy. When millions of shoppers trade down to cheaper brands at once, the pattern is loud. Buying less meat. Chasing deals harder. It shows up in the transaction data before any government report. The chains can see financial pressure building across the country weeks ahead of the official numbers. And the loyalty program is the thread that ties it all together. That warm little ask at the register. Got the app on you? Mind sharing your number? It sounds like small talk. In truth, it laces your record onto every other thing the chain has banked. It grows a running file of your habits across years and years. Which brings me back to something a viewer put plainly, and it deserves the spotlight. In more and more stores, there are now two prices. The shelf price and the lower price you only get if you have the app. Sometimes the gap is small. Sometimes it is close to double. Read that slowly. Protect your privacy. Pay cash. Skip the loyalty card. And you are charged more. The person doing the careful, self-protective thing pays a penalty for it. Now set that next to the unpaid labor at the kiosk and a shape appears. The store hands you the work, then charges you for keeping your data to yourself. Two costs, quietly shifted onto the shopper who follows every rule. Which is exactly why so many careful people still feel like they are sliding backward. So, step back and take in the whole board at once. Prices up. Packages down. Fewer choices. Kiosks where cashier stood. Toothpaste behind glass. AI running silent across every transaction. Carts logging your movements. Loyalty files fattening a profile across the years. Everyone showed up with its own neat justification. Supply chains pushed the prices. Labor drove the kiosks. Theft drove the locks. Competition drove the AI. Convenience drove the smart cards. Every reason is true. Everyone reflects real business logic. But look at them together, and something surfaces. These are not separate fixes to separate problems. They are the same shift, wearing different costumes. A shift in what the store wants to become, and in what it means to extract from each trip. Across most of the past 100 years, one question ran this business. How do we treat shoppers well enough that they keep coming back? The edge was the experience, the selection, the bond with the neighborhood. Service itself was the product. The question steering stores today sounds similar, but it is not. Today it goes like this. How do we optimize the operation? Cut the shrink. Cut the labor. Predict demand before it exists. Squeeze the most value out of every transaction and every square foot. When the question changes, everything under the roof rearranges around the new answer. The kiosk optimizes labor. The lock optimizes loss. The AI optimizes shrink and shelf. The smart card optimizes flow and data. The loyalty card optimizes prediction. None of it was built to ruin your day. But pile it onto one trip, repeated week after week, and the total is very specific. The place begins to feel designed for the machinery beneath it, not for the human pushing a cart through it. And this only speeds up from here. The tools that feel new right now will not stay new. The AI, the behavior platforms, the smart carts, ordinary plumbing inside a few short years. What reads as a shift today will simply be how groceries work. The pace is not easing. It stacks on itself, which leaves a question worth holding on to. Not about technology, not about margins, about what a grocery store even is as a place. Not a logistics node or data platform, but somewhere that sits inside a community. Somewhere people go not just for food, but to be, for a moment, part of something shared. There is a reason millions leave these stores with a feeling they cannot name. It is not the receipt, though, that stings. It is not the machine at the front, though that is part of it. It is not the locked case, nor the lens overhead, nor the display on your cart. It is the pile-up. A new camera goes up and that makes sense. A lane flips to a kiosk makes sense. A product slides behind glass makes sense. A rewards app rolls out makes sense. A cart sprouts a screen makes sense. Not one of them crosses a line alone. Together they crossed it, and nobody can say exactly when. Through nearly all of retail's past, a store pulled one thing from your trip: money. A purchase, a markup, and everybody headed home. That was the entire arrangement. Today, a store takes your money and your behavior, your preferences, your traffic, your loyalty file, your contribution to prediction models that carry a value all their own, separate from anything you bought. The grocery store quietly became two businesses under one roof. One moves groceries. The other harvests and sharpens data on the shoppers who walk in for them. And barely anyone realizes the second one is even there. They come in picturing dinner. They leave stewing over the total. And in between, something else happened all around them, in a language most of us never learned to read. You paid at the register, but you also paid in a currency you never agreed to spend. But here's where I refuse to leave you. A diagnosis without a move is just anxiety, and you have enough of that already. You are not powerless in this store. You are outnumbered by systems, sure, but you are not without tools. So take the tools back. First, put friction between you and the impulse. Cash, you counted out. A list you actually wrote. A rule that nothing off the list gets in without a fight. The store spent a fortune making spending effortless, so make it cost you effort again. Second, know the price of your own data and decide on purpose. If the app saves real money and you accept the trade, take it with your eyes open. If you would rather not be a file, pay the small penalty. Know it is the cost of a boundary, not a mistake. Third, check the receipt before you leave the lot. In a system this automated, the scan is not always your friend. Shoppers keep catching the same item rung up twice. A steak double scanned. A charge that should not be there. Weigh your own produce on the store's scale when the shelf math looks off. It takes a minute, and that minute is you auditing a machine. A machine that never audits itself for you. Fourth, spread your dollars around. A shopper in the comments moved to street markets and small local shops. She spent less, because fewer levers were pointed at her. She's onto something. The small store, the ethnic grocer, the farmer's stand. Those places still run on the old question: how do we serve you? Vote with a few of your trips. You will not stop the machines, and that is not the goal. The goal is to stop shopping like they own you, because the most important thing here is not any one gadget or any one policy. It is this: when the question a store sets out to answer shifts, everything else tilts to match. For 100 years, that question was how to serve you. It has not vanished, but a second question now runs right beside it. In every aisle, on every visit, one most shoppers never hear. And the reason you never hear it is simple. It is not being put to you. It is being asked about you, and the answers are being quietly kept. You are not imagining the change. Something real moved. Now you can see it, and now you get to decide how you walk through that door. So tell me, what is the one thing you have actually noticed at your own store? Put it below. I read every single one.